Good afternoon and welcome to the CS Week WebEd webinar series. This series offers educational webinars that bring to light timely topics which impact utilities in a broad way. I'm Lisa Collins with CS Week and I'll be your moderator today. Mark your calendars for CS Week and Conference 40 to be held April 25th to the 29th at the Phoenix Convention Center in Phoenix, Arizona. This program will be recorded and available for playback along with our other archived presentations later this afternoon. You'll find it by clicking on the webinars icon on our homepage and then clicking through the CS Week WebEd icon. Attendees are encouraged to upload questions to the Q&A panel as they arise. However, all questions will be held until after the presentation for the Q&A segment. Please ensure that you address your questions to all panelists so that we may see them. Today's webinar is Rethinking Utility Customer Care, presented by author Todd Arnold. Todd is a utility industry veteran with 40 years experience. Todd is retired from Duke Energy where he was Senior Vice President, Smart Grid and Customer Systems, and prior to that, Senior Vice President, Customer Service. Todd is a member of the CS Week's Board of Directors and chairs the Executive Summit. Welcome, Todd.
Thank you, Lisa. Good morning, everybody, or good afternoon, depending on where you are. I'd like to welcome you to CS Week's webinar in which I'll be discussing my book, Rethinking Utility Customer Care, Satisfying Your Always Connected, Always On Customers. And I'd like to start with a little walk down memory lane. I started in the 70s, my utility customer service career in the 70s when the primary customer service tool was microfiche. Then in the 80s, we put the customer accounts online. Then in the 90s, the digital phone switch and 1-800 numbers enabled us to go to call centers. Then in the zeros, the web-enabled e-bill and online payment. So my career saw this very paced, linear evolution of customer service. And then in early 2010, after 34 years of service, I retired from Duke Energy, and it afforded me this opportunity to watch and become fascinated by this decade's extraordinary change that's occurring with the customer and the transformational impact on the customer experience. And this became the impetus for my book, and so I'd like to start by illustrating some of these extraordinary changes that are occurring. This is President Obama's first inaugural ball in January 2009. If you remember, Beyonce serenaded the President and the First Lady as they danced. And if you jump 4 years later, this is January 2013, and this is President Obama's second inauguration. And if you're paying close attention, you would have captured a very significant difference. And that's in just 4 years, from nobody to everybody having a smartphone. That we see this just literally overnight. We go from a few lighted screens to everybody capturing an event through their smartphones or tablets. And so we have this almost literally overnight shift to universal connectedness. Another example, and this is from the book Mobile Mind Shift, but they tell the story of February 2013. You remember Pope Benedict had announced that he was going to step down, so the cardinals had gathered in Rome to select a new pope, and Michael Sohn, who is an Associated Press photographer, was dispatched to Rome to cover it. So he's waiting in St. Peter's Square, and finally, after a couple of days of waiting in the rain, sees the white smoke, signifying that a new pope has been chosen, and so he runs over to Vatican Square to get himself, just right within the perfect spot of the balcony. He gets himself about 200 meters from the balcony. He's fretting, is he in a good enough spot? Is he going to be able to capture that perfect picture as the new pope is presented to the world? And of course, he's fretting and waiting, and lo and behold, the doors finally open, and at this moment, photographer Michael Sohn sees the extraordinary picture, and he captures the shot. And this is the picture he took. To him, the extraordinary moment wasn't the Pope, but what he saw when thousands upon thousands in unison raised their smartphones and tablets as one. And what hit him was they were experiencing this significant moment, not with their own eyes, even though they were present, but through the screen. So again, we have this overnight shift of how people are experiencing life through these devices. So I have no doubt that if the Titanic were to sink today, that it would look something like this. And I'll walk through these examples to basically point out that, you know, literally overnight, these are now your customers, always connected, always on. Author Brian Solis makes the point that he says it's not traditional age demographics, it's not teenagers or millennials with their smartphones, it's a cross-section of America, and it's what he referred to as Generation C, with C being connectedness, and it was really across all generations. Gartner estimates that the total number of devices this year will reach 7.8 billion units, and what's interesting about that number is behind each of those 7.8 billion is an individual consumer, and it's not just that these consumers have a device, it's that they're on it constantly. 73% online daily, 42% several times, and you have a significant number that are basically constantly living on it. And so your customer is now always connected, always on. Not only will Norman Rockwell's Thanksgiving dinner never be the same, your customer will never be the same because of how connectivity is changing every aspect of how they live, work, and play. And this overnight connectivity has really been mostly centered around the phone and the tablet. But to use the slang term, we ain't seen nothing yet. The connected home, streaming entertainment, connected cars, wearables, quantified self, digital wallets, big data. I mean, we're entering this time where everything has a digital chip in it that talks to other digital chips, and of course that's what's referred to as the Internet of Things. And so, you know, the first 5 years of this decade has been about connecting to the phone or tablet. I believe the last 5 years of this decade will be about connecting everything to everything. And as extraordinary as that is in terms of this consumer technology and how they're adopting it, I think we need to keep in mind that the technology is just the enabler. And the significant thing to me, or the extraordinary thing to me, is how it is changing how the consumer lives, works, and plays. And I think that's driven by what I call, or coined, the extraordinary eyes. And I don't mean iPhone, iPad, or iTunes, but it's intimacy, immediacy, and innovation that's driving this extraordinary change in the consumer. And I want to take a minute to talk about each one. Intimacy, when you think about a mobile digital connected device, it goes to the individual, and it's very intimate to the individual. Bank of America's 2015 Trends in Consumer Mobility Report finds 71% of respondents are sleeping with or next to their mobile phones. And in fact, for millennials, over a third of them always sleep with it in their bed. 11Mark is a communication solution consultancy, and they report 3/4 of Americans use their phones in the bathroom. And as wearables proliferate, this intimacy will only magnify. And because these devices are always with the individual at all times, even in the most intimate of times, you now have this ability to reach, interact, help, transact with a specific individual at all times. And I really think this changes everything in the customer relationship and the opportunities that you have to engage them. The second I is immediacy. Customer service has predominantly been a call center experience where quality has been judged by average speed of answer, somewhere say less than 60 seconds, average handle time 3 to 4 minutes, first contact revolution of 70 to 80%. But when you think about always connected, always on consumers, they now are having a very different set of expectations through their smart devices. They expect an average speed of answer, immediately connect, average handle time of a few touches or screen swipes, and a first contact resolution of 100%. Because if it doesn't work flawlessly every time, they're going to call your call center and they're likely not to use your app again. So we really have this key component of customer expectations to some degree has always been about speed, but what we're now seeing is that speed become immediately, and therefore immediacy is almost becoming table stakes in the customer experience. And the last I is innovation. You know, it used to be if you had a great idea to do something great for a customer, you had to not only build the solution, but in terms of taking it to scale, you know, how do you provision it, deliver it, market it, especially as you want to go across the country, across North America, and across the world. You know, a huge challenge and implications to really take and deliver your product to scale. Now, whether it's an Android or a Samsung SmartThings or an Apple iOS, all these scaled platforms are now out there for you to deliver your solution. And so what you end up with, in iOS, an example, all I have to do is build the app, and it's immediately available for distribution, provisioning, and to over 1 billion devices. And so that means now individuals can come up with very affordable, great ideas that go to very niche markets. And we've all heard the saying, there's an app for that, and in reality, it really does mean there is an app for that, because there's an app for darn near about everything. And so these three extraordinary I's of intimacy, immediacy, and innovation, I think are a large part of what's transforming how the customer lives, works, and plays, and most importantly, transforming the customer's expectations for service excellence. And so you now have this customer that wants it all and wants it now, because that's what they're receiving on a regular basis. So I like to say, meet your new customer, me, myself, and I. And you know, one can argue that it's always been about serving your customer, but I think there's a key difference here in that the power is shifted to the consumer, and not just consumers of a group, but more importantly to the individual consumer. And that's why I use these multiple descriptors of the individual in terms of me, myself, and I to denote this exponential power that is now centered and emanating from the individual, because any way you cut it from any angle, the only perceptions that matter now lie with this new consumer, me, myself, and I. And because of this connectivity, and you're really seeing a time where they are getting it all, and they are getting it now, and it's really redefining customer service excellence. Some examples, you know, Apple iOS tells me the geographic location of all my Apple computers, tablets, and phones. FedEx tells me where their package is every step of the way. Uber tells me the progress, location, and time of arrival for the ride I've selected. And so when you think about that, it has a profound impact on what your customers expect on their outage restoration communication. You know, it really boils down to they're going, why can't my utility tell me more about my outage when everyone else is telling me a lot of details? I can pay by waving my iPhone or iWatch at a pay terminal. Also, I can be standing in line at Starbucks, see I don't have enough money on my prepaid card. With a couple of touches on my iPhone, I immediately add money to my card, order my coffee, hold my iPhone up to the scanner to purchase the coffee, and my balance is immediately refreshed. And this has profound impacts on customers in terms of how easy they find it is to pay utilities, as well as how fast they expect the utility to reflect their payments. And last example here, I can set any of the 5 DVRs in my house from anywhere in the world through my iPhone app. I can set my Nest thermostat from anywhere in the world. And this has profound impacts on what customers expect from utility demand response, energy efficiency programs, and also what it takes to start or stop or transfer their utility service. And I think this got summed up by a person by the name of Lee Willis, and I give him a lot of credit because he saw this very early in this transformation. He says, if your smartphone can tell you where the closest sushi bar is, and then tell you if your friends are already there, and then you can check your bank balance to see if you can buy the first round of drinks, then having your smart meter shave just a little off peak demand is not good enough. And so I think the question for utilities in all this is, how smart will you be? If you remember when I started with a walk down my memory lane of the decades of customer service, the prior decades were very orderly. More importantly than that is those orderly changes in customer service were really being introduced and controlled by the corporations. And today is very different because these changes are being driven by the technology and the small innovators that are building the apps, and the customers who are searching for solutions that make their life easier, simpler, better. And so when you really think about it, the corporations are no longer in control of the customer service innovation. It's really now the consumer that is in control. And so it's now this powerful me, myself, and I who I think really holds the power. And so how smart you will be is, won't be answered by you, but really by your customers, because they're very powerful, in control of who they engage with. The customers can get so much information, so many solutions from so many different people. They don't have to engage with you. So the reality is utilities haven't necessarily wanted to actively engage their customers. I've heard many utilities say we're doing some of our best work when customers don't need to think about us or contact us. And the problem with that is, since me, myself, and I can get so much information so many places other than utilities, then back of mind becomes totally out of mind, and that makes you irrelevant. And if you're irrelevant, then it becomes almost impossible to have the customer perceive you in a way you want, understand something you think is important for them to understand, or most importantly, take some action you need them to take. And that's why utilities need to be front of mind, and this is why I think it's important for utilities to engage their customers and build a relationship. And that's really where customer service, customer care has this huge opportunity to be a big part of building this relationship with their customers. But in order to engage today's customers and have a different relationship, I think customer service needs to understand that the customers today are very different, that me, myself, and I is demanding that you rethink customer care for our connected world. And so with that, I want to transition where I'll cover some items in detail in the book where I talk about where utilities need to rethink customer care. Customers being in charge and deciding who they engage with requires us to rethink how we measure success. And I think it's important that we don't mistake activity for accomplishment, and therefore in the book I talk about measuring success in terms of outcome-based customer engagement. There's 4 levels of customer engagement. One level is presentment, and that's where the messages and programs are exposed to the consumer, may or may not have been consciously seen, read, or heard. And the key distinction here is within all this presentment, it hasn't really stuck with the customer, or they haven't internalized it for later recall, even though they may have seen it. Second level is awareness, and that's messages and programs where the consumer consciously saw, read, or heard, and it was placed in their memory in a way that later events can trigger them to recall it in their memory. And clearly, social media presents this opportunity to reach many more customers with many more messages. But I think we need to be careful that we're not using social media to become Bill Inserts 2.0, where we feel we're effectively communicating by stuffing more messages into social media channels. I think communicating is important, and you can communicate enough times that you have a positive impact because you've created awareness. But the real benefits and the real engagement comes from this action and sustainability categories. Action is where the messages and programs cause the customer to take some action that you desired them to take. Sustainability is where these messages and programs cause your customers to repeatedly take the action that you desire them to take. And these 2 levels are where you can have a huge impact on customer satisfaction. J.D. Power did a consumer engagement study. They surveyed customers on engagement with 30 typical utility programs, and then also gauged their overall satisfaction with the utility. And what they found is those that weren't aware of any of the 30 utility programs scored a satisfaction of 587. Those that were aware of at least one average satisfaction of 646. But where the real benefit came in was those that were really engaged in using those programs. So if it was one program, they scored 655, 2, 682, 3, 713, 4, 747, 5 or more, 781. So you see this as customers engage and actively engage with your programs, you see this tremendous uptick in satisfaction. And the other key part in that is 34% were participating in at least one of those 30 programs, but 22% of those were e-bills, 6% were budget billing. So most of it was our core, what we've had a lot for quite a while in terms of e-bill budget billing. The other 28 programs, less than 6% were engaged. So we have this tremendous opportunity to rethink engagement, and a lot of that comes through the programs. Another area, you'll often read that the key to getting customers engaged with energy is education, that we must significantly increase the resources dedicated to customer education. And I do think customer education is important, but when it comes to customer engagement, I think easy trumps education every time. You're not going to get the customer to do anything unless it's first and foremost easy. And so I think we have this prerequisite or this litmus test for behavior change. It's all around easy and simple and that it works flawlessly. And these are the prerequisites now for everything you do to engage your customer. And so I believe every initiative you undertake, any service changes you do, almost requires this religious commitment to the outcome of easy, because I just don't think with today's customers you're going to achieve that with anything less. Another area I'd like to talk about is reliability and outage. I think we need to rethink how we need to think about them, and primarily that comes in realizing that they are two very distinct customer experiences. Reliability is very back of mind. Outage is very front of mind, in my face, experienced personally in the moment. Reliability is a utility term, not a customer term. I did some work with J.D. Power in their Smart Energy Consumer Study, and we asked an open-ended question in a study regarding smart grid and its benefits, and then we took the thousands and thousands and thousands of responses and words we had and used a text analytics engine to go across their answers. Interesting, the customer did not use the term reliability. They spoke more in terms of fewer outages, quicker restoration, but they didn't use the word improved reliability. And I think utilities have done such a great job of delivering a reliable product that's taken for granted and back of mind. And that's the problem. As you improve your reliability, you can't expect customers to perceive it. Reducing your average frequency of interruptions, say from 2 to 1.6, or reducing your average duration annually from 120 minutes to 96 minutes, that 20% improvement would be a huge or significant engineering and operations improvement. But I don't think your average customer will perceive it. And it doesn't mean improving reliability isn't important. I think it's critically important, especially in today's digital world. But I think the reality is your customers won't perceive the improvement on their own. And, getting credit for your hard work requires a different approach. And I really think it's more about connecting with me, myself, and I, or connecting with the individual to let them know how hard you're working for them. And I use FPL as an example here. They have a website that has a feature called System Improvements Near You, where customers can put in their address, see what improvements have been made near them, things such as pole inspections, vegetation clearing, power line improvements. And if you look at it, FPL isn't trying to get their customers to understand reliability. They're getting them to understand how hard they're working for them on their behalf. As they say, as they tagline on their website says, make our infrastructure stronger every day in good weather and bad. And I think that's something the customer can understand compared to percentage improvement in safety or safety. And it engages the customer, but, because it's not an abstract high-level corporate communication message, but one that's specific to what you're doing for your customer specifically or for their neighborhood. And I think you'll see more and more as I go through here, the key to engaging your customers is not about, all overarching positive corporate messages. A lot about it is connecting with what you're doing for me, myself, and I. I think another part as you rethink reliability is, utility using smart meter and smart grid information to diagnose and fix many problems before an outage occurs is absolutely realizing the benefits from smart grid and big data. but your customers aren't going to see how hard you're working for them unless, you find a way to let them know. An example I use is customers who experience a 90-minute planned outage to have a transformer replaced will see themselves as having an inconvenient outage. They won't see how hard you're working for them unless you let them know and understand that it was your intelligent systems that identified an upcoming transformer failure and enabled you to prevent them from experiencing a 7-hour equipment failure type outage. Another example is a utility that is able to restore outages before the customer has to call will not get credit for a timely response. The customer's going to come home and see his clock blinking and think poor reliability, not rapid response. So, I suggest rethinking reliability along the lines of FP&L, but go much further in terms of how you rethink, how you become proactive and send alerts and communicate with your customers and letting them know how hard you're working for them. Let's speak about outage. I think we have to realize that outages today are very different for our customers than they were just 5 years ago. 5 years ago, an outage meant you lost your lights and TV. What I have here is a screenshot of an article by Stanley Bing, who's a columnist for Fortune magazine. And in his article, he eloquently pointed out that in this day and age, a blackout means losing a lot more than your lights. You can go Google, if you Google Bing, a cloudless night, you should be able to find the entire article, but I want to just do a small excerpt here. He goes on to say, he says, the TV was a doorstop. I don't have a transistor radio. My laptop had about a 50% charge. If I was careful, that would last me a couple of hours. I felt a rivulet of sweat on my brow. Of course, there's no internet. My Verizon box was down, and with it, my wireless network. I was sobbing softly as I went to my iPhone and tried to tweet out an SOS. My phone was dead. I had forgotten to charge it, and now it was too late. Too late. We assumed that a good charge is only a wall plug away, but now it wasn't. I stood in my living room surrounded by the inert detritus of our digital cosmos. No Facebook, no Twitter, no Pinterest, no iTunes, no movies, no downloads, and good God, no capacity to send or receive email. I sank to my knees, no entertainment, no access to work, no social media, just me. I never felt so all alone. And then the lights went on. Now, of course, that's a little melodramatic, but go Google the entire piece and you'll see it really does perfectly capture today's customer experiences. I think as much as we're logical people, we need to remember that our customers experience our products with a lot of underlying emotions, and I think Bing's poem does that outages are a real pain. The customer may know how hard you're working to restore power, but at the end of the day, when are you going to get my lights on? Not everybody else's is really the expectation. So even though they may understand initially in an outage how hard we're working for them, I think the clock quickly ticks because the always on, always connected customers wants it back on now, and in the meantime, they want a lot of information specific to their specific outages. Let me talk about rethinking meter to cash. Typically utility customer services involve set a meter, bill a meter, collect on the meter. Thus, we have what I think is a relatively non-customer-centric term of meter to cash that we use to describe our customer care processes. I think to engage today's consumer, you must make them the focus of your customer service processes. So I like to use the term meter to me, so let me talk about a couple of the meter to me examples in the book. A unique characteristic of our industry is not enabling its customers to know their usage and therefore their cost until long after the purchase is complete. And so I like to say we provide our customers monthly mystery bills. And, can you imagine the level of satisfaction you'd have with your credit card company if they sent you a bill with only the total amount on it? I mean, for me, every month when I get my American Express bill, I look at the total and then I immediately scream, this can't be right. I look at the details, show it to my wife and daughters, and I'll be darned, it's right every time. So, why would we expect our customers to look at their utility bill and think it's right when we're only showing them the total for the month? And, there's been a considerable amount of discussion about utilities needing to become their customers' trusted energy advisor. And I think if you want to be trusted, we better be able, to have their customers believe their bill. And I think believability starts with the ability to have at least daily usage information. I use an example of Arizona's Salt River project. Their customers can see on the web their daily usage compared to daily temperature. They can compare their bills to similarly sized and equipped home. And what's interesting about this, they find their customers have a great thirst for this information because the most visited web page is the one with the daily usage information. So I think that's a good example of how you kill the monthly mystery bill. Pepco customers with smart meters can download an iOS or Android app that enables customers to see their daily or hourly usage information. So, I think in this day and age, we need to build the business case for smart meters, if for no other reason, to give customers their information. And if we can't, I think we at least have to select and use some of the, energy analysis applications that are out there that take your data and weather data and customer-provided data analytically, give them a much better context on their bill. Another meter-to-me example, I started my career during President Carter's administration and the OPEC oil embargo energy crisis, and so it seemed like that day and for the next 35 years of my career, I found myself telling customers for 35 years, put on a sweater and dial down the thermostat. And, I've got to believe our customers are starting to look like, Randy. If you remember, Randy was Ralphie's little brother in the holiday classic, A Christmas Story. I'll go back again to another example about Salt River Project. For 14 consecutive years, they've been ranked at the top of J.D. Power. There's a lot of reasons for that. But I think one big one is they allow their customers to be in control. The concept of customer choice is embedded in their culture and their programs. They have 31% of their residential customers on various pricing alternatives that vary by time of day. 17% of their customers have selected prepaid service. And when you think about Salt River Project's customers in Arizona live in some of the hottest temperatures on the planet, I think most cannot live without their air conditioning and have to have a degree of comfort. And so the ability to lower their bill by raising their thermostat, closing the blinds, insulating their homes has been done long ago by the majority of them. And I think what SRP has done so well is to also give their customers multiple options that enables their customers to go from a feeling of helplessness to one of being in control. So, we've spent a lot of time telling our customers what they can do on their side of the meter to save energy. I think a big part of it is for us to turn our attention to providing, numerous pricing and demand response options so that they can, feel that they have more control and go from this feeling of helplessness. Let me talk a little bit about self-service. I think self-service is when you go to a fast food restaurant, eat your meal, and then you clean your own table. In some way, we've got ourselves into, conditioned to bus our own tables. And that self-service, I think, probably at its worst, because we're doing something for the corporation that has a little benefit to me. I think today's digitally, me, myself, and I customers require what I call my self-service, and my self-service has just as much, if not more, benefit to the customer than the corporation. And I think a good example of that is airlines. 68% of airlines use self-service. Yes, there's benefit to the airlines in that it reduces their back office, but there's a lot of benefit to me in terms of I have a lot of flexibility on many different devices at many different times to choose how I want to check in. And so my self-service makes life easier, and it's that simple. And if what you're offering on your IVR, web, mobile, or app isn't clearly making life easier for your customers, and you have self-service, not self-service. You know, and also a part of this, we need to understand that customers are in control and want to choose what best fits them. And I use the example of grocery stores. I appreciate that I can choose when I want to use self-service because I only have a few items in my cart, or I can go to full service when I have a cart full. And I think it would be stupid for a grocery store to want to force you through self-service by limiting the number of full self-service checkout aisles. I think it also would be really stupid for them to hide their full-service checkouts so that the only thing I could find was the self-service, yet in many cases, that's what companies do with their IVRs. You know, I used to do containment, and now I think with today's customers, I think containment's great for prisons, nuclear waste, and baby diapers. I don't like it for customer service. I think it becomes less and less a concept that works with today's customers. And another reason I think it's important to think about it is I'm reading numerous studies that say the majority of your customers are now going online to try to serve themselves first. And then, of course, if they can't resolve their problem online, then they're likely to call you. And when you think about it, your best customers that have tried to serve themselves are going to be in your IVR. And yet it's probably likely that if online didn't help them, the IVR is not going to help them either. And yet, depending on how your IVR is designed, you've put them in the IVR jail. So I think with today's customers, it's less about contain and more about ease, convenience, and simplicity. And therefore, I don't think today's customers are to be contained against their will. So, you know, I think it's time we trust our customers will make the right choice that benefits both of us. Let me talk about fingertip. You know, when you think about, used to be to find an answer, I'd let my fingertips, you know, let your fingers do the walking through the yellow pages. Now it's let your fingers do the walking across the screen. And so, you know, everybody's adding apps, and that's important. But if you want to really truly have an app for that, you need to understand, I think, that me, myself, and I have some strict rules for what that is. And I think a truly engaging app for that enables, you know, the customer to get something done very easily in something that they want to do repetitively, easily, and within a couple of swipes. So if you look at the apps that you have on your own personal phones, I think you'll find the ones you use regularly are the ones you can do something that you need to do regularly and that you can do immediately and easily. So, you know, again, back to outcome-based customer engagement doesn't mean you have an app for that. It means that you have an app that your customers can easily, quickly resolve a recurring need, and therefore they're engaging with it regularly. Another area, Rethink, you know, we've historically, as utility segmentation was residential, commercial, industrial. We've all realized that we need to get much more segment in our programs and communication with our customers. And I want to give you a segmentation example that I read about from a 2012 social media marketing conference. The presenter talked about they had this segment, born in 1948, grew up in England, married twice, 2 children, likes dogs. And so they had these segments, and of course you end up with these two. And you know, does that mean these two will respond in the same way to the same messages? It's probably unlikely. You know, my point here is segmentation is an important marketing tool, but I think there's a change coming, and IBM's CEO, Gina Raimondi, I think stated it well. She said, big data will spell the death of customer segmentation and force the marketer to understand each customer as an individual. The shift is to go from the segment to the individual. It spells the death of the average customer. And that leads to what I think may be one of the biggest biggest opportunities for utilities to engage. And it's what I call providing service in the key of me. It enables us to go beyond market segmentation and speak to the individual. You know, we now have the ability to provide our customers with specific information, allow them to choose what information they want to receive, how they want to receive it, when they want us to give it to them. And a lot of you are doing this wonderfully by setting up, you know, preference management capabilities. And it really is a key piece, because you're not about mass market messages, not about segmented messages, but you start to build this ability to give specific information that's relevant to each individual customer on the terms they want. You know, again, I'll give a SRP example. They'll send out 17, 18 million email messages a year, over 1 million texts a year. And what's key in that is not that they're sending out all those messages, but that each one of those messages is in the key of me. Each of them are specific, tailored information specific to that individual customer's, you know, information specifically about their bill, about their specific usage, their specific budget, their specific outage. Another example is Hydro Ottawa. They have a portal that they call My Hydro Link. It enables customers to sign up for Predict My Bill, where the consumer will receive across the channel of their choice at the frequency of their choice, updates throughout their billing cycle on what it looks like the bill will be. And I think not only does that eliminate the monthly mystery bill, they're engaging their customers with information that's specific to that individual, me, myself, and I. And that's what I call this engaging in the key of me, and I think it's a tremendous opportunity for utilities, because I think it's something your customers really want and are definitely engaging with. I won't spend much time here. I do a little more in the book, but I've talked a lot about technology and processes. The thing to remember is customer service representatives are going to be more important than ever. They're not going away. You know, as self-service technologies handle the simpler calls and even the routine calls, that means what's left for the rep is the tough calls. Your customers are very smart. They've done a lot of research before they've got there. And so your customers are smart, and one of the questions is, have you empowered and given your customer service reps to be just as smart and knowledgeable? So won't spend much more time here on it, because I want to leave a few time for questions, but huge impact on customer service reps is important as ever, and how you train and equip is extremely important. Throughout this, I've used the term extraordinary. Let me wrap up by just giving credit. A number of years ago, early in this transformation, Michael Saylor, in his book, The Mobile Wave, made this wonderful point: whenever teenage girls and corporate CEOs covet the same new technology, something extraordinary is happening. And so as I think about that, and one thing about being retired and having wonderful grandchildren, the picture on my left is my oldest granddaughter, Madeline, in 2010 when she was 2. The picture on the right is an annual picture I take on my birthday with my granddaughters. This one happened to be in 2013 when Riley was only 1.5, and you can see she is playing with my iPhone. And so I've shamelessly adapted Michael Saylor's quote that whenever your grandchildren can embrace and navigate technology before they can talk, something extraordinary is happening. And you know, this is a marvelous industry that, you know, has built and operated the most complex machine in the world and improved lives beyond imagination. You know, it's an industry I fell in love with because of the marvelous work it does and because of the people who do it. You know, but we've been an industry that's been content to be back of mind, and I guess I'd leave you with this thought that this ubiquitous digital connectivity really changes all that and provides us wonderful opportunity to transform the energy experience and gives us this wonderful opportunity to rethink customer care. So with that, let me go to questions. Lisa?
Yeah, hi, Todd. That was very good, very informative and very insightful as well. I'm sure the attendees feel the same way. You've had a number of questions come in, so I'll just start with the first one I received. It was digital technology and the connected customer are very dynamic and constantly changing. Where's the best place to start?
Yeah, I think, of course, every context is different, every company is different. In the book, I do cover some areas on universal starts. You know, one I would go back to is what I talked about easy in terms of really starting to build within your company the culture and the commitment, you know, that as you're doing new things, changing new things, you know, that you're really starting this, how do we make it easy and really do it from the outside in or from the customer's view, because no matter how technology changes, no matter how things go, that cuts across everything, so it will serve you well going down the road. And quite frankly, no matter how much new and interesting technology and channels you do, if it's not easy, you're not going to engage, it's not going to connect with your customers. So I think that's a universal. And then the second one I'd throw in is in the book I talk about customer access strategy, which is actually coined by an author by the name of Brad Cleveland. But, you know, when you think about so many of our channels, we've kind of migrated to where we are today, that in so many ways it's probably, well, it's because we've always done it that way. And a customer access strategy is looking at all the different channels that customers can access you on, and you formally look and say, here's the services we're going to offer across them, here's the quality of service, the hours of service, you know, some of the technology that's supporting it, how we're going to measure the quality. And you do that, one, in terms of where you are today so that everybody's on the same page saying, yes, that's what we're trying to do every day. But then it also gives you the opportunity to say, okay, where do we need to be 5 years from now for our customers, and start to build that articulation of where you need to be that enables you and leads you into the ability to build your own roadmap.
Very good. So the next question that I've received is, how do you build the business case for the investments required to serve these digital customers?
You know, I think that may be one of the toughest things for utilities. You know, all of us know we're a different industry in terms of how we create value and how we make our money in the regulatory and rate-making process. And I think one of the challenges is going to be that, you know, a lot of new technology we've been able to do because it did away with other costs. But, you know, we may be entering this inflection point where all the things we have to do for our customers don't necessarily cut costs everywhere else. They become more adders than decreasers. And how we do that when we don't earn a return on customer service dollars makes it even more difficult. So I think a large part of it is understanding some of this is going to take some time, but you need to start now in terms of how do you raise the issues internally, build awareness internally of what your customers are asking for, what your customers need, and building that understanding with your senior leadership in terms of how things are changing, how fast they're changing, what that means for the investments you need. And then, of course, tying that back to all your customer data. And I think part of it is all the survey companies you work with, make sure they're truly not just covering where your customers are today, that they're bringing you information on where they're going. And I think another part, you know, just to close this one quickly is, you know, I honestly think to some degree there's a whole regulatory piece that needs refigured to really create a return for customer service excellence and the investments required.
Okay, very good. So I have another question. This one's a little bit lengthy, so I'll take just a second to read it. It says, you use the Staples Easy button to illustrate the prerequisites for rethinking the customer experience. What are your thoughts about delivering new customer services that are personalized when most utilities are using an aging legacy system, which is difficult to integrate and maintain, especially since studies indicate that greater than 60% of contact center volume is generated from a bad digital experience? Great question. I think one of the things is to, you know, try to separate the difference you can do now quickly from things that may really require the, you know, much bigger investments, much bigger resources, much bigger times to truly go in and have to, you know, build a whole new foundation or something. So, you know, I think a big part of it is, can you, you know, I see a number of companies that are being fairly effective
by starting the ability to gather preference information in terms of, additional information in terms of customers' email, the email or the phone number the customer wants you to use, and then to start enabling the customers to ask for information from some of their existing capabilities, and that may just be payment alerts, billing alerts, in those kind of things that you start doing some proactive communication that's in the key of the customer and giving them information on them. And you may only go so far, because I think the second half of the question points out, a key piece in that, and I make the point in the book that really getting in and understanding your processes and how they're really working and deciding which processes you want to go in and really transform to make them easier and simpler. We can be in a hurry to run out and do apps and do more technology, but doing all this stuff on bad processes is just going to add greater frustration. And I think that was pointed well in this great question that, if you go out and put all this stuff, new stuff on bad stuff, it's all going to be relatively bad. And so there is a piece, there are certain things you got to do now that maybe you do need that presence, and I understand that, presence on mobility in an app. But, probably the real thing that's got to be done is also just backing up on these key things that customers interface and want you for and always will, and that's the billing and the outages and, that core stuff. A good place to start is not necessarily run out and do technology. A good place to start is really doing that outside in look at your processes.
Okay, very good. So following up on another question, the attendee asked, tell us more about the IVR jail. How can an IVR not become an IVR jail? I probably used the term, IVR to include and be interchangeable with, some of your routing as they come into your system. And so specifically, I may be using some of the terms wrong, but I think it boils down to pretty early on giving your customer the option as to whether or not, hey, if, we can if your answer is a basic question, we can quickly be happy to take you into self-service. If you'd prefer to go and speak to a customer service rep, you take them right to the customer service rep. Or if you're not wanting to do it that far up front, at least somewhere pretty well into the, once they're into the question on their bill, question on their payment in the IVR, you're also allowing them to know how to get out to a rep. I mean, there's nothing more frustrating, because if you look, once I'm in the IVR and if all the options are about taking care of yourself and there's no options for getting to a customer service rep, I'm in there bouncing around until, I find usually if I hit the zero key about 100 times, it'll eventually take me to somebody. But, you've got a customer that's pretty smart, that does a lot of self-service, knows how to take care of themselves, has tried it on the web. If you've got a process that once they come into your phone switch, they're pretty quickly into, are you calling for billing, are you calling for outage, are you calling, and they keep coming through the IVR, and you keep wanting to tell them, about their payment or about their billing balance when that's not what they want, and you're not telling them how to get to a rep, you've created this great frustration of what I call the IVR jail. So I think a lot of it is about the options you put up front. I think a lot of options is also really getting in and analyzing your existing IVR and how customers are behaving in it, and learning a lot from what you've already got and where it's working and where it appears your customers are just hanging up and abandoning. Okay. So you had another question come in. An attendee is wondering, and I guess this goes back to your targeted messaging segment, that the question I guess would be, how can information be customized for every customer, which it's very difficult to tailor, and then the flip side of that would be sending out too much information or overloading the customer, and then perhaps nothing is read. So are you any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think there's great points in the question in that, you know, we got to be careful that we're just not burying customers and information. I'm so tired of all the emails I get from companies that have kind of tricked me into giving them my email so they can send me 100 emails every day. And that's not what I'm referring to. I think a lot of it is you've got to allow the customer to be in control, make them aware of the information they can request and how they can get it. And I think, you know, it's going to vary from customer to customer, but it's really going to be about allowing the customer to establish those preferences about how and when they want communicated, and then more importantly, what information they want. And like I said, that will vary from customer to customer, but a lot of it starts simply with customers that may be on e-billing and automatic pay, just wanting the notices that come out that says, here's your new bill. The notices that come out that says, we've automatically, you made your payment today, thank you very much. So a lot of it is you start with the basic, and then what I've seen is those that have, a lot of are those that have smart meters and have really started to be able to utilize their smart meter data are allowing the customers to say, allowing the customers to say, please tell me how I'm doing on my monthly bill and whether or not I'm going to stay within my budget, and alert me to that in different ways. But I think it's starting with what you have in terms of information that may be specific to the customer and information that you think they may want, and then I think it's a matter of having that preference capability for them to state what they want and when they want it, and then let them opt in and let them take it. I'm not I'm not advocating you just start swamping your customers with unasked data or information.
Okay, well, that's very good. Well, we're getting close to the top of the hour, so I want to be respectful of all of our attendees' time, and Amber, if you'll flip the next slide, that'd be great. If anyone is interested in purchasing Todd's book, you can see the links here. You can purchase it on Amazon and Barnes & Noble, and you can reach Todd here at this email address with any other questions that may have come up post-webinar. And if your question hasn't been answered in today's segment, Amber Weens with our office, CS Week, will communicate with Todd and get those questions to him so he can follow up with you post-webinar. Just a quick reminder that registration for CS Week 2016 and Conference 40 is open. You can go online to our website, csweek.org, or contact our office to register, and early registration ends March 1st. So, and with this, I would like to say thank you, Todd. It was a really wonderful session, and I'm sure all the attendees enjoyed it very much and gained some really great insights, and I encourage you to purchase his book if you have not done so already. And with Todd, would you like to leave some some remarks, closing remarks?
Just thank everybody so much. Appreciate the opportunity to get to share this with you, and thank you all.
All right, thank you, and this will conclude our webinar.